guys, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I want to discuss 4 different reasons I think we could see a huge bull run in 2024 and 2025. Now, obviously, this is going to be majority speculation, but I do think there is a growing pile of evidence to suggest that 2024 and 2025 could be a solid couple years for cryptocurrency in general. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy these videos. So the very first reason I think 2024 and 2025 could be bullish years is because of the Bitcoin halving. Historically, what we have seen is about 6 months after the Bitcoin halving, we see a decent amount of price appreciation. And obviously, one of the main reasons that we do see price go up is because of speculation around the halving itself. That speculation combined with the Bitcoin halving narrative is obviously going to increase price just from buyers buying in to make sure they don't miss the boat. So that being said, I do think there is another large reason as to why the Bitcoin halving is important. And that reason is there are large mining facilities in the United States and in different countries that mine a ton of Bitcoin. And after each halving, the amount of Bitcoin they get for mining is halved. So what that means is after every halving, these big mining Bitcoin facilities that generate Bitcoin and then sell it on the open markets for profit lose 50% of their revenue overall. So that means these big mining facilities have 50% Bitcoin less to sell on the open market. So if you take into account Bitcoin's limited supply of 21 million Bitcoin, and then you do the halving, which means all these big mining companies that are huge whales that have a ton of Bitcoin on a monthly basis from mining get a whole lot less. You also take into account that Bitcoin is an in-demand asset, so less supply, more demand equals price go up. So the Bitcoin halving has shown to be incredibly important for the market overall, for Bitcoin overall, and I do think this time is not going to be any different. All right, so the second reason that I think 2024 and 2025 could be bullish years is because of inflation and the Federal Reserve in the United States. So the Bitcoin halving is about 6 to 7 months away. And what this could mean is that in 6 months' time, we could start to see the Federal Reserve start to lower interest rates over time. And as we have seen and as history shows, lower interest rates is better for asset prices overall. So in 6 or 7 months, when the Bitcoin halving takes place, and then if we know that about 6 months after the Bitcoin halving, that's usually when we start to see that big price action come in, that gives us about a year for the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates down to a point to where that could be bullish for assets. And so I think the timing makes a lot of sense, and I think the timing could be particularly bullish for cryptocurrency in general. Cryptocurrency, speculative assets, even stocks, housing, all of those different asset prices are going to be pushed down by high interest rates. Once we can stabilize at a lower interest rate, I do think that overall is going to be really good for cryptocurrency prices. So just from point 1 and point 2, the Bitcoin halving and potential lower interest rates, and also the timing working out really well for those two, I do think those are 2 really solid reasons as to why dollar cost averaging Bitcoin right now could be a great idea. All right, so now we're moving on to the third reason, and I think this is a particularly interesting reason because it basically all revolves around the next presidential election, which is going to be taking place in the United States around November 2024. Now, once again, if you think about the timing of everything, with the Bitcoin halving happening in April, with a 6-month period after that leading to price appreciation, and then we have potential lower interest rates around that point, and then we also have the presidential election in Q4 of 2024. Now, I'm going to ask a simple question. What president would want to run their campaign during 2024 with stock and asset prices in the gutter? Very well knowing that these asset prices are directly hurting their voters' wallets, my answer would be that not a single president in history would want the stock market or different assets to be doing really poorly during that time period. So I think some of the language that they use, the campaigns that they go on during this time period, are going to potentially be vehicles for potential price appreciation for cryptocurrency. I also think when it comes to the presidential election, cryptocurrency prices are going to be heavily dependent on the president that actually gets voted in. I think it's pretty clear that Biden is anti-crypto and Trump is more pro-crypto. So politics aside, whoever you like, whoever you're voting for, I don't really care, but that does seem to be an objective truth. All right, so we have the Bitcoin halving, we have lower potential interest rates, we also have a presidential election, we also have all 3 of these things happening around the same time in the same year. And then number 4 on the list for a potential bull case scenario for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in general is going to be the Bitcoin ETFs that trillion-dollar and billion-dollar companies are gunning for, like Fidelity and BlackRock. So we know collectively that all of the companies that applied for a Bitcoin ETF have trillions of assets under management. And this in itself is incredibly bullish for two reasons. The first reason, if a Bitcoin ETF gets approved, that opens up cryptocurrency for institutional investors as well as retail investors who are looking to get exposure to cryptocurrency via the stock market. They will no longer have to download MetaMask and get a seed phrase and secure it properly and get a ledger and use Coinbase or use Binance or whatever any of the exchanges are. They can just buy the ETF from BlackRock or Fidelity and get exposure to crypto that way. Now you have to remember, just because these retail investors or potential institutional investors or whales, billionaires, millionaires are getting exposure to cryptocurrency via this ETF, that doesn't mean there is not going to be price action for cryptocurrency because of that. Fidelity and BlackRock will have to be buying Bitcoin, will have to be buying Ethereum and different cryptocurrencies to make sure that they have the exposure to give the exposure to the retail investors via the ETF. So companies like BlackRock and Fidelity and all the big companies that are aiming for this ETF are going to have to buy cryptocurrency and hold cryptocurrency in order to provide these ETFs at all. So that's potentially billions of dollars of buy pressure going into the cryptocurrency market. And there's been a ton of speculation and a ton of manipulation potential around these sort of markets where people are saying, okay, Fidelity and BlackRock and all these big companies are trying to drive the price down of Bitcoin with the SEC and getting all this FUD out there so they can accumulate the Bitcoin that they need to get this ETF going at lower prices. And look, that is all complete speculation. And as a retail investor like myself, you know, a small fish in a large ocean, that is not something I'm concerning myself with. I'm going to be dollar cost averaging and gaining my own portfolio and managing my own portfolio and making sure that I can make the best moves to make as much money as possible. The big picture of these trillion-dollar companies is not something I'm going to concern myself too much with, but obviously I want to stay up to date because it is going to affect the market overall. Okay, so we have the Bitcoin halving, we have lower interest rates, we have a presidential election, and we have a full-scale Bitcoin ETF potentially getting approved all in 2024, all around the same time. So that is essentially the bull thesis for why 2024, or at the very least the start of 2025, could potentially be bullish years for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin specifically. The growing pile of evidence seems to be packing up, and to me, this is, for me personally, not financial advice, one of the best times for me to dollar cost average into Bitcoin. Whether or not we go lower is not super relevant because I've explained this strategy before and I will explain it again. Right now, I'm dollar cost averaging Bitcoin and Ethereum on a bi-weekly basis, and if we go lower, I will either up the amount of money that I'm putting in or up the frequency at which I'm putting that money in. Both of those strategies accomplishing the same goal. My bags get bigger, hopefully not too fast, so I can catch at least a bit of the bottom whenever the bottom is or wherever the bottom is. Whether we go 30% lower from here or this is the bottom, it doesn't matter too much for me because in a couple years time frame, I'm hoping Bitcoin reaches its all-time high again and breaks through that barrier and we could see 70, 80, 90, 100K Bitcoin. All right, so let's take a step back from being a perma bull and just talk a little bit about being a devil's advocate. What are some reasons as to why, you know, these four giant reasons, in my opinion, may not pan out to be as bullish as we might expect? And I think the simple answer to that is just macro bearish headwinds. You know, the United States and many other countries have high inflation, customers, consumers, citizens of these countries are hurting, debt is adding up, unemployment is potentially rising a little bit, we could be entering a recession. You know, Jay Powell came on in his meeting the other day and said he wasn't so sure if a soft landing was possible anymore. And so these overall macro headwinds that are potentially bearish could very well affect the rest of the points that I explained earlier in the video. And so this is why it's conviction, it's speculation, it's being an investor trying to understand the whole scenario and then developing a strategy around that. Mine is dollar cost averaging, nice and slow. If we go lower, I'll up it. If we go higher, maybe I'll decrease it a bit. But I do think right now is a decent opportunity in terms of risk reward that right now I'm not willing to fade. If you guys enjoyed this video, once again, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate you, and I will see you guys in the very next one. Peace.